Rights to freedom is dead. We're coming to get our check.
Black first, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Afro Elite YouTube channel. I'm your host, Afro Elite. I hate to talk about stories like this. I really do. But these stories are definitely necessary for us to document. They're definitely necessary for us to know, because these are the stories that help us advocate for a unique anti-Black hate crime bill, something that has never happened before. Other groups of people, when they go through grievances, when they go through hardships and struggles, or there's a spike in their hate crimes or people making fun of them even, then they get specific hate crime bills and legislations that are enforced to protect them. Us as Black folks, especially Foundation Black Americans, because our history of hate crimes have gone hundreds of years since the origin of this country. We have never had any such protections by the government at all, despite having the most hate crimes out of every single demographic in this country by far, and is not even close. There's no other demographic, none at all, that even somewhat reaches, even halfway reaches the amount of hate crimes that we get on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, and on a daily basis. None at all. And the sad part about this is that a lot of hate crimes, clear anti-Black hate crimes, don't get documented, don't get marked down. The police will look at it, the detectives will look at a clear hate crime, and then they'll say, well, we're not 100% sure that race had a factor in this situation. They can be screaming racial epithets and everything, and they'll say, we don't know if the intent, if there was racially motivated intent behind this action. That's what they'll say. They will never say that to any other group of people. This is why it's very important that we talk about stories just like this. So I'm going to read to you guys an article, and it's going to discuss a story of a clear hate crime and how that hate crime is being dismissed as a drug deal gone bad. So this comes from Atlanta Black Star. It says, this is the title, quote, "I just blew that N-word's head off. 3 white men who chased, gunned down Black man in Florida escape hate crime charges." Now it says, 3 white men who pled guilty to charges linked to the murder of a Black man in Jacksonville, Florida, are being sentenced this month for their roles in his death. Now, before we even go any further, remember, Jacksonville was the same city in Florida where last year there was an anti-Black massacre. There was a white supremacist, because that's what he admitted to, a white supremacist, okay, who went to a store, a dollar store, Dollar General to be exact. And he went there and he deliberately targeted Black people, shot them, okay, massacred them just out of anti-Blackness, okay? This is the same city. So we have to pay very close attention. I need every single Black person who's in Jacksonville and Florida in general, but it's specifically when they go to Jacksonville, you have to be very aware of the incredible anti-Black hate that exists in that city. Now, it exists all throughout America, so I don't want people to get confused that I'm saying any place in America is safe, but there are specific areas where the danger level is very high. Jacksonville is definitely one of those places. Really, Florida, to be honest, is one of those places. A lot of that can be blamed on Ron DeSantis. A lot of that can be blamed on the anti-Black rhetoric that he spews that emboldens the anti-Black hate that exists in that state. Now we're going to continue. It says, Ryan Nicholas, Daniel DeGrodia, and Holden Dodson were all arrested after the body of 39-year-old Gary Jackson was found behind a dumpster on May 2nd, 2023. Now, look at the faces. Ryan, that's the one you see all the way to the left. That's the one he has like this scratch on his nose. If you look really closely, you can see the scratch on his nose. Daniel, that's the one who's in the middle. He kind of has, you can kind of tell he has like some non-white, non-Anglo in it. He's white, but he has some mixture in it. He's like a Hispanic. He's a white Hispanic. Okay. You can clearly tell by his features and by his name. And then you see the blonde guy all the way over to the right. That's Holton. All right. So you have faces to go with the names. It says, according to police, all three men were seen chasing the victim in a vehicle after 2 a.m. that morning. At one point, as Jackson attempted to hide behind a dumpster, Nicholas jumped out of the car and chased him on foot. Shortly after, Nicholas was seen getting back in the car and the group left the scene. Police found Jackson's body that morning with multiple gunshot wounds. All three men were arrested the next day. Nicholas, 20, was charged with second-degree murder and tampering with evidence, while DeGordia and Donson were charged as associates after the fact. They originally said it was Dolson. So when you go up top, it's an L, but they change it. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they keep saying Donson. So I'm going to say that. I guess they made a mistake up top. But I want to address this. First off, how do you charge somebody with second-degree murder? How are you charged with second degree if the person is chasing the other person, literally in a vehicle, got out of the vehicle, chased the person on foot, and then shot him multiple times? That's first degree. You clearly have intention on shooting that person and ending that person's life. That is first degree by definition. You are doing something, you're having is premeditated. First degree means it is premeditated. By you chasing somebody as you have a gun, getting first off from the car, leaving the car, going on foot and chasing the person on foot as the person is running from you and trying to hide from you, and you find him, you shoot him and kill him. That's intent. That means that's first degree. And you see how they're trying to throw him a little bone by giving him second degree and quote unquote tampering with evidence. And then the other two, you can charge them, to be honest, with accomplices. And you talking about accessories after the fact. How were they accessories after the fact if all three of them were in the car? If all three men were in the car, and it makes sense that one of the other two men were driving. I doubt that he was driving and then he stopped driving. The other two men were in the back seat. He was probably in the back seat or the passenger seat, and one of the other two men were driving the vehicle. If they were driving the vehicle trying to chase Jackson, and then they stopped when he was probably ran into an alley or something, all three of them are involved. That is not accessory after the fact. You can't be accessory after the fact if you were helping, participating in this man even catching him in the first place. That makes you an accomplice to murder, not an accessory after the fact. What would make a person an accessory after the fact is you found out afterwards, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna help you hide the gun, or I'm gonna help you hide the body or something like that. That would make you an accessory after the fact if you were not involved before or during the event, but you were involved in the event of catching him, so you can't say after the fact. We're going to continue. It says, last week, a judge sentenced Nicholas to 40 years in prison. Donson and DeGordia both testified during Johnson's sentencing. Donson said that they were all drinking and doing cocaine the night of Jackson's murder. Donson and Nicholas were the only ones who were armed. According to Donson's testimony, Nicholas was the one who started chasing Jackson, and after a brief pursuit, he came back to the car and accused Jackson of stealing his gun. DeGordia said that they then got into a car. Nicholas told him where to drive. After they found Jackson, DeGordia claimed Nicholas took Donson's gun and got out. Okay, before we continue with this, that don't make any sense. That does not make any sense. Let's be very, very honest. That doesn't make any sense, because how does somebody take your gun? They have to disarm you, which means you have to be showing them your gun, which means you were probably pointing your gun at them. If you're pointing your firearm at somebody and they have the combat expertise, they have the martial arts skills, the lightning fast reflexes necessary to disarm your gun, they're not going to turn the gun back on you. They're not going to threaten to use the gun. They're going to take the gun and then run away from you. They're going to take the gun and then run away from you. And you, without a gun, are going to chase a person with a gun on foot. And then when you couldn't catch him, you got back in the car and you started driving and trying to catch the person with a gun. And the person with a gun is not, he doesn't shoot at you one single time. The person with a gun is trying to hide and run away from some people. Does that sound realistic? Does that sound like that happened? They were all drinking and doing cocaine, according to what they were saying. And then next thing you know, I mean, it seems like a big time gap. That seems like a pretty big time gap. How did you, if y'all was apparently partying, how did you go from partying and then next thing you know, somebody's stealing your gun? What happened in between? It sounds like a lot transpired in between that time. But we're going to continue. It says, after they found Jackson, DeGuardia claimed Nichols took Donson's gun and got out. Quote, Nichols did say something along the lines of, I know where you're hiding. You're about to get shot, DeGuardia said. Donson and DeGuardia both said Nichols shot Jackson several times behind a dumpster, and when Nichols returned to the car, they all drove away. Quote, Nichols said, I just blew that N-word's head off, was one thing that he said. And nobody steals from me, almost bragging, Donson said. And the whole thing about he stole or whatever, I think that is made up, or I think that they are at least, even if that did happen, which by their story, it does not add up. Their story don't add up that Jackson just stole his gun. That doesn't add up. Why would he just do that? How do you do that and then you run off? You have no intent on shooting the gun, using the gun. You just snatch guns from people and run off? That doesn't make any sense. And they're bringing this up out of context. Even if he did take the gun, they're bringing this story up very odd. They're skipping over important details and they're bringing this up more than likely, if it is true, it's out of context because they're trying to twist this narrative and make it seem as if this is just some criminal activity and both sides were wrong, and this is what happens when like maybe a drug deal gone bad or a robbery gone bad or something like that, instead of a hate crime, which is what this is. It continues to say, News 4 Jax reported last year that witnesses told the station the three men had been interacting with Jackson and what they suspected was a narcotic situation before the encounter took a turn for the worse. Now, I'm going to say again, that don't make sense. Let's just run this down. Let's just run this down. So, we don't know who is selling the narcotics and who is buying it. Based on what we know about the story, based on what they told us, we can safely assume that it was the three white men who were buying it. They said they were smoking and doing cocaine, and they were probably buying some more drugs. That's probably based off of what we know that they've told us. So they were doing that. And even if you want to say they tried to rob him or something, because there has to be a reason why Nichols even took his gun out in the first place. If Jackson, let's just say, is selling these narcotics, there would have to be a reason that Jackson Nichols took his gun out. And I sincerely doubt that Jackson was trying to rob them because Jackson didn't have a gun. So let's say Nichols tried to rob him and Jackson grabbed the gun and he was able to disarm Nichols or whatever. He did that and then he just ran off and he's running and running and running and he had to hide behind a dumpster. So you mean to tell me that Jackson, he's such a bad drug dealer. He has no escape plan if things went bad. He's an unarmed. This man is dealing because this is clearly not no simple like weed or nothing like that. He ain't dealing no edibles. This is some heavy drugs. So he has access to cocaine and things, but he doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a gun himself. He's this unarmed, no car drug dealer who has no escape plan if things went awry. Okay. He's able to disarm somebody, but he has nowhere to go. He's not by his house. He's not by anywhere safe. He's running on foot with somebody else's gun. That's what you expect me to believe? Okay. And then they're not even bringing up what transpired to where a gun was pulled out in the first place. See, this story, and even if, and to be honest, the whole narcotic situation, we can't prove that. We can't prove that at all. And I'm sure that that's just them trying to say that to try to spin and lighten up the hate crime that occurred. I'm sure of that. But even if we did say the whole thing about the drug deal and the narcotic situation, it made a turn for the worse, that don't add up. It doesn't add up. You're missing a lot to this story. This puzzle is missing a lot of pieces, and we cannot make out a full picture with this. That means that they're hiding something. The three white men are hiding something, and the media is helping them hide something. It continues to say, quote, he took off with their pistol because one of the guys showed him his pistol and was waving it around. The station reported, one witness said, okay, that's exactly what I said. The man had to have unholstered his gun and showed it to him and talk about waved it around. That man was probably pointing it at him. He wasn't like, "Ooh, look at my gun. It's so nice. It's so pretty." He was probably pointing the gun at him because that's why people take their guns out. Is not to just wave. He wasn't waving it around in the air. He wasn't pointing it down. He wasn't trying to do no drug deal. And he was like, "Hey, I just want to show you how nice my gun is." That's not what happened. Okay. If what they're saying is true, he was pointing the gun. Okay. Then it continues to say, according to police, the group thought Jackson was homeless, which Jackson's wife firmly denied. Okay. So let's add this up together. This is the same article that said that they think that this is a narcotics deal gone bad. So they were buying narcotics. And I'm not talking about weed now. Remember, we're talking about things like cocaine because that's what they admitted they were doing. So they went to buy cocaine from a homeless man, from someone they thought was homeless. So they tried to essentially rob a homeless man of his cocaine. Okay. Yeah, this story is not adding up. And then it says his wife, so Jackson was married. So okay. Does this story make any sense? No, it does not make any sense. They're insulting our intelligence by even trying to make us believe that this is what really happened. It continues to say, quote, he was never homeless. He had family. Junita Jackson told Action News Jax last year. He's been to jail a couple of times, but other than that, he was a good husband and a good dad to all of his kids. It's just messed up how they took him away for nothing. I'm just going to pause it right here and say, rest in peace. I'm going to say my condolences to the family. It's terrible. A wife lost her husband. Children lost their father. I'm sure he had some good friends. I'm sure if his parents were still around, they lost their child. This is a tragic hate crime situation that took the life of an innocent black man. It continues to say, the police report on Jackson's death revealed that he pled for his life when Nichols opened fire, saying, "Please don't do this." Authorities said that Nichols threw the gun he used to shoot Jackson over a bridge, indicating evidence tampering. Okay, now stop this. So, does this story, first off, it's very offensive and insulting that Atlanta Black Star would even imply that this was a drug deal gone bad, that this was some type of narcotics transaction. This man robbed this person of a gun. That's insulting because that doesn't make any sense. If he robbed him of a gun and he's running for his life, why doesn't he shoot the gun? You mean to tell me this man he snatched the gun, he's armed, he has a gun, and he's running away from his life for his life, and he does not open fire one single time? But he's running around, he's hiding behind a dumpster and saying, "Please don't do this." This sounds more like a hate crime than it does a robbery gone bad. Because if that's the case, then Nichols would have just ran up, he would have got his gun back and walked off. He wouldn't have shot Jackson several times. It sounds like there's something more to this than a quote unquote drug deal gone bad or a robbery. Then it continues to say, then after that, then he threw his gun over the bridge. So you mean to tell me you chased this man down because he snatched your gun, and then you shot him, and then you threw a gun over a bridge? So you did all of that to get your gun back, to then throw away a gun. So you're down one gun regardless. It's a lot of trouble for guns. I mean, apparently, according to them, guns is a rare thing to find nowadays. It's a lot of trouble for a gun. If you're going to just throw a gun away, you're down one gun regardless, which doesn't make sense if all of this was because you were robbed. No one was charged with a hate crime for the murder. At the time of the arrest, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office said there was no evidence to suggest that bias or prejudice were factors in the killing. No evidence. Okay. Jackson's family members have asked the judge to impose the maximum prison terms for all three men. Quote, "Three monsters against one black man. They chased my uncle down," Jackson's niece, Anquanice Jackson, told Action News Jax. "Ryan, Daniel, and Holden, damn me the second I woke up thanking God for letting me see another day and praying for my family and friends," Jackson's auntie, Leanne Butler, said. Donson, 22, and DeGrodia, 19, face a maximum of 15 years in prison each. They'll be sentenced on June 28th. Once again, I want to say my condolences to the family. Okay. A father being taken from his children, a husband being taken from his wife. If his parents are still around, they're a parent, a child being taken from their parents is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. Okay. I hate reporting on these types of stories. I really do. But these are the types of stories that get underreported. Jacksonville, they clearly said you chased the man down and you called him the N-word. Racial epithets, first degree, everything you need to classify this as a hate crime. Everything you need, and you're saying there is absolutely no evidence. Not we can't fully prove, but there's no not you, you know, intentionally chasing someone, shooting someone several times in the head, calling them the N-word. There's no evidence, according to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department, that race had any factor, that bias had any factor, that there was no prejudice in this situation. And I want you guys to really understand that this stuff happens all of the time. This doesn't just happen in Jacksonville or even in Florida. This happens everywhere in America. Everywhere in America, we see stuff like this. And the police, because they side with them, the police have sympathy for them. The police water down what they did. What you can see is clearly first degree. They'll mark it up to second degree. What's clearly a hate crime, they'll say it's not a hate crime. There's no evidence to even suggest that this is a hate crime. Clearly, you are an accessory to murder, and they'll say, well, no, you're just an accessory after the fact. You're an accomplice to first degree murder and a hate crime. No, you're just an accessory after the fact. Because when you were driving, chasing that black man, and you handed him your gun so he can go in there and shoot him several times, and then you drove to a bridge to throw the gun over the bridge, you had no idea. That's you being an accessory after the fact. So they're watering these things down. Another thing that we have to pay very close attention to, look at how young, 20, 22, 19 years old. You're fresh out of high school. If you went to high school, these are essentially kids. They are just entering into adulthood, and they're committing hate crimes. And let's be very honest with you, most of the hate crimes that we see, especially the ones we see currently, are done by young people. Most of the mass shootings, most of the hate crimes, all of these things are done by young people. Folks in the between the age really of 17 to about 25. Under 30 years old is where we see majority of hate crimes being committed. Under 30 years old. So when people tell you that this is 2024, racism is dying, we're not like how we used to be. Yeah, it's still kind of bad here and there, but this generation doesn't have the bias, the anti-black hate, the prejudice, and the bigotry that their grandfathers had. Oh, no way. There's a little racism there. It's ignorance. There is more ignorance than it is prejudice. It's more ignorance than it is anti-black hatred and racism. But you see a lot of the hate crimes coming from the younger generation of the dominant society. That's what you see. That's what is being shown. Every time we look at a hate crime like this, it's somebody more than likely in their early 20s doing it, if not late teens. Folks still in high school doing these stuff. It's under 30. Really, like 8 times out of 10, you see a hate crime and it's under 30. This is why it's so very important that we as black folk in this country, no matter where you are, especially if you're in one of these high hate crime areas like Jacksonville or like the state of Florida, but wherever you are, whether the state is red, blue, whatever, you have to keep your head on a swivel, okay? You have to make sure that you are paying very close attention to your surroundings, especially when you're the only black person in the area, especially when you're by yourself, especially when it's night, especially when you don't have any weapons on you, especially when it's a situation where if somebody did come to attack you, you would probably be defenseless. You need to make sure that you are not in those situations. I don't know how the brother Jackson, I don't know how he got involved with those 3 men, because he's in his 39, he's pretty much in his 40s, and they're in their early 20s. So I'm not sure how they even came to be into any interaction. I'm not sure. But the thing is that you have to understand that you are even if they're younger than you, okay? Even if they're younger than you, he's almost pretty much old enough to be their father, and they chased him down. So you have to understand that. You have to understand he might have thought Nichols was by himself, but Nichols had 2 other people with him. You don't know these situations. There's a lot of situations that you don't know all of the details of. So you need to prepare for the worst. Don't try your best to avoid any interaction with them, to be very honest, because your safety is at risk. Try your best, your absolute best, to avoid any interaction with them as possible. Limit it to what's absolutely necessary. Okay. You have to make sure if you're by yourself, if a situation does pop off, then you get the short end of the stick. You don't have a weapon on you, then you need to be around somebody or around an environment where they can't get away with stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. We don't really know the situation. We don't really know the details of it. But this is something that all of us need to be aware of. And all of us need to put in the forefronts of our mind before we go out there, because we have to understand how dangerous society is. Now, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think about the story. Do you think this is a hate crime? Do you think this is a narcotic situation gone bad? A robbery gone bad? Let me know what you guys think and what you guys think could have been done to prevent this situation from happening in the comment section below. Also, you can be following me on my various social media pages, which is Afro Elite on Instagram and The Afro Elite on Twitter, or X, whatever you call it. And the links to both of those are in the description below. Please do not forget to hit that like button before you leave. Please hit that like button and subscribe and hit that notification button, so that way we can grow this channel, we can grow our influence, and we can affect change and bring about change by spreading awareness to stories like this. Now, with that being said, brothers and sisters, please be safe out there. Please do. And you all have a good one.